about today. First, we start with the syllabus, we'll talk about the exam. Didn't put up the guiding plate here. All right. Today is the 10th of September. Today we will start chapter 2 about sociological questions and research methods. And then we'll just continue on. We should catch up at some point, but nonetheless, there will be more than one chapter on the next exam for sure. The next exam will be on September 29th. On Monday. I think they're always on Mondays. We'll always check the syllabus. On the 29th, covering whatever, starting with chapter 2 and however far we get along. So it will definitely be more than one chapter. It could be 3 or 4 chapters. Depending on where we are. And that's what's coming up between now and the next exam. Any questions about the schedule? Okay. I do have the aggregate results of the, the individual results too, but I have the results of the exam. Now, I posted most of them, but I try to hide them. Did you guys see your grades or not? They're hidden, right? Okay. I have a few left to put in, but so it's really two populations, and what we call in statistics a bimodal population. Everybody paying attention in the back there? Okay. We're really a bimodal population. So let me just go through this, starting with the very good news. 3 students got 100, which is, on the high side. Usually it's 1 or 2. 3 students got 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 students got a 97.5, which means they got 1 wrong. Another 1, 2, 3 got a 90. Another 2 got a 95. 1, 2, 3. Another 3 got a 92.5. Another 3 got a 90. And then there were a bunch of 87.5 and 85s and 82.5s, and so on. That's the good news. And to me, 3 students getting 100 and a bunch of them in the 97s and 95s shows that it was, it's just basically the same exam I give every semester, so I know what the statistics should be. Did very well. The low grade in the class, and when I say this, I really don't want to make the person who got these lowest grades feel bad. It's just really it's really an indication that something's not going right. So the low grade was a 32.5. Then there was a 30, 35, 30, 3, 30, 4, 37, 5 37s and a half. I'm just reading off the list. I have it on here so I don't accidentally show it. A bunch of 40s, a bunch of 42.5, 45s. So it really was the top half of the class the top 2/3 of the class did pretty well. Top half did very well. Bottom third did poorly. Okay? I hate to have been right, but I kind of told you that was going to happen just in the aggregate. So the question is why? Well, obviously the students who got 100 in the high 90s and the 80s, probably did what I suggested. Came to class, paid attention, notes, did reading up front. And my guess is, my hypothesis is, and we're going to talk about hypotheses today, that the third that did poorly didn't do that. I could be wrong, but I look forward to those students coming to speak to me and finding out what happened. Right? If you got it in the 30s or 40s, something's fundamentally wrong. Right? I think you saw, regardless how you did these questions, were very, very close to what we covered in the class. Right? There were no trick questions. It was, you did the reading, and oh look, we went over this. Oh look, we went over that. Right? I think that's pretty much the way I construct the exams. So, I like to be positive about these things, right? There were some really good grades. But I'm also positive that some people didn't do what they were supposed to do. And that every semester happens. And usually the reason, people have things that are going on in their life, I understand that. But usually the reason, and again, a lot of you are freshmen, is that they will come up to me later and say, I got away with not doing the reading and not preparing as much in high school, and I had 80s and 90s, and I didn't think it would make any difference. I thought I would get away with it. And this is a little different. right? A little more freedom, a little bit more individual, independence. And when no one's, kind of watching you and how you study, sometimes, I've got, there's a party on Saturday night, or, I've got a bunch of other classes and I thought sociology was the easiest one, so I didn't put as much time in. Those are the typical reasons. But anyway, congratulations to the students who did really well. And to those who didn't, you have 4 more exams and it's time to kind of figure out what happened, right? Any questions? I know you want to know what your grades are, right? I'll release them. I have to put a few more in. I would say I will release them by tomorrow morning, okay, before we meet next time. All right? Any general questions? All right. So put that away. If this, I wish I could announce the name of the 3 students who got 100 and say congratulations, but I really can't do that, even though that I don't think they would object. People know in their grades, but I just can't do it in general. So it's a violation of FERPA. Okay, so on to the next topic. So chapter 1 was about theory, was about the origins of sociology, was about sort of probably not the most exciting thing you've ever read in your life, right? But chapter 2 is about a very different set of topics, much more practical and much more, I think, interesting and much more relatable. So we start with the question, the chapter starts with the question of sociology and science. So here's an opportunity for you to show that you did a reading and answer the question. Yes?
Wait, I thought you actually did the reading. What's the question?
That's the question right there.
Oh, it's sociology.
On the big 50-foot screen.
It could be as a scientific method in sociology. That's what I got from the reading. Like, it could be like, what I got from my reading was like, it's steps to define, like, the problem or something.
So is it a yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying it's a yes because of the scientific method that you use? Okay. Anybody else? Is sociology a science, and if it is, why? And is it? If it is not, why not? Yes. Okay. So the intent is to study human behavior in a scientific way. Good. What else about what we talked about? Yeah. Okay, the scientific method, which we'll go over today, correct? Correct. And where else have we talked about, where did sociology come from? From what natural science? Physics. So the very basis, the very origins of sociology was based upon a science, right? Comte wanted to move away from philosophy, which is not really a science. It's a social science, but it's very amorphous, right? It's like, why are we here, and what is knowledge? It's very interesting. You should take the class in philosophy if you think it's interesting to you, but it's not really a science. So everything about sociology was based upon a science and attempts to. And what did how did Durkheim want to advance sociology as a new discipline? Yes, in the back. He was a structural functionalist, so yes, that would be consistent with what he believed in. But he also wanted to give credibility to social facts. Remember that term social facts that we talked about? Which means that he thought that having very clear research methods would give credibility to sociology. So everything about it is based upon scientific research, or aligns with scientific research. It's based upon empirical investigation. Empirical means things that can be seen in the real world, things that can be counted, things that can be validated, things that are real, not our opinions. So Comte and sociologists want sociology to be about evidence, about empirical investigation. I could tell you right now, my best guess is that there are 55 cars in the state quad parking lot. But that's not empirical investigation, right? That's just a wild guess. But if we all went out to state quad parking lot and I counted 55 cars and you counted 55 cars and you count, then that's validating my number. That's empirical investigation. We're just taking a wild guess, it's not, right? And that's how things change, because philosophy and other disciplines just kind of estimate. Sociology is guided by a theoretical approach. We're going to talk today in the scientific method about the hypothesis. We'll talk about the theoretical approach to the scientific method, or you will. Oops, sorry. We're about to get. But that's kind of the set of answers that would address that question. Any questions from you? Okay. So these are the steps in the scientific method. I think in your textbook they've now moved to boxes, but it's the same process. So we'll just go through it in this format. So the first step is defining the problem. Who'd like to tell us what that means? Yes. Okay. You have to figure out why their problem exists and why you should invest your time in exploring it, right? Something is going on and you have to define what the actual underlying problem is. You have to address the issue, the question of what are the gaps in understanding? Because, why reinvent the wheel? If somebody has already solved the problem, why are you looking at it again? What are the gaps in understanding this topic? What are the puzzles that have not yet been solved? What is the justification for you to invest your time in doing research about this topic? Usually when we do research, we have time constraints, we have an objective, maybe we have a budget, depending on the situation you're in. So why are you picking this topic? You have to define what the problem is and what can be accomplished by researching. And I don't know if I have a more. Order. So research, when you think about research, you're thinking about a funnel, right? The general sorry about this. You start out with the general topic, and when you're finished, later in the research process, you should get down to the specific. Okay? So as we go through the scientific methods, we're trying to get from the very general topic down to the very specific topic. So this is the first time we're going to start that process. So if my topic is poverty, that's a very big topic, right? It would take you forever to research all of the topic of poverty. So we have to start getting from the general topic, whether it's poverty or something else, to the specific thing that we can manage. I don't know if you can see it, but you get to it. I can do it. Think of it fun. And the way we start narrowing it down to the specific is starting to filter it through when, what, how, where, and why. I want to research poverty. I want to narrow it down to a region of the country, a time period, a population, right? Then we can do something more manageable. So we're starting to get a little closer to the specific. But it's a multi-step process. Excuse me. Any questions? Okay, so that's the first step, defining the problem. The second step is the literature review, or the review of the literature. Now, how many of you have done a literature review before? Somewhere? One? Couple of you? Yeah, if you're a freshman, you might not have done that. How did you go about your literature review? What was the first thing you did? Yeah, sure.
I had to read the book. I then had to go through quotes, important parts of the book, things that stood out, things that changed other characters' lives, and then when depending on the topic was, you had to dive into deeper into why and what could have changed and why did this person make the choice and how did that others.
But you only looked at one book for your literature review?
I wrote it for like an advanced class, so I had to write things too, and then it comes to like a common theme.
Okay. Who else has done a literature review? What did you, where did you go to do the literature review? Like, what source did you use? Say that again? Oh, yeah. Right. 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 Yeah, I mean, Google Scholar is okay. The only problem is, unless you have an account, and I think you can get one if you have a student account, but they charge you if you don't have if you're not signed up, right? So what I'm going to show you today is a social science database that you can access for free. If you're on campus, you get it automatically. We'll see that. And if you're not on campus, you can log in through your UAlbany account. So the way to do a effective literature review is to know how to use Boolean operations or Boolean modifiers. And these include terms like and, or, not, these would exclude things, and not, asterisk, which is a wild card, quote marks, which we'll see the importance of that, brackets, and things of that nature. And I'll show you how that looks in a minute. These are modifiers to make your life easier so you're not spinning your wheels looking at everything. So I'm going to leave the slides for a second and show you a social science database that is something you should know if you're going to be a sociology major, psychology major. Now, you could always go to the UAlbany library website and do your searches, but it'll actually use things like what I'm going to show you in the background. So it's better to, it's good to know this as well. And this is all covered in this chapter. Okay. All right, let me go back to the internet. It's a website called jstore.org. And it's really simple. Now, if you notice, we're logged in automatically because we're on the server. If you weren't, it would say log in, and you would log in with the same credentials you use to get into email and Brightspace and things like that. So it's a really simple interface, and we'll start with poverty. Let's just say we start with poverty. How many search results did I get?
700,000.
Over 720,000. Anybody have time to go through all that? Well, we need to narrow this down. So, and New York. And now it's a little bit better. But if I put quote marks around New York now, we might get an even better result because now it's not just looking for everything that says new and everything that says York in the same article. Well, it's not that much. It's okay. But the way we really want to narrow this down would be poverty and 2025. And now we're getting much closer, right? Now we're narrowing down the population and let's say, what else what else might I want to look at? This year, what other subpopulations might we want to look at? And New York. What'd you say? You said what? Counties? Okay. So, well, it's only one word, but Albany. And now we're getting much closer to a manageable amount, right? You see how that works? Or we could say, or Troy. And now we're in really much better shape, right? And just got to keep playing with it. Now, a couple things about this, really nice. If you hit the cite button, it'll create the citation for you. What's in your literature review, you're going to have to list all the citations of the things that you're covering. So it automatically generates that for you, but you know what a citation generator is probably. If you're logged in, you can save these for later, and you can download the article. If you're not logged in, you cannot download the article unless you pay money. So let's take a quick look at this. You've probably seen a journal article before. It gives you this title page. You really don't have to think much about that. But what you really have to do is find the abstract. This is interesting. So got a lot of fluff. Let's see if we get to the real one. Wow, this might not be the best article. So let's see. Sometimes you have to bail out on it. Oh, it's just a bibliography. That's why I didn't read it. Okay. Journal article. It's 0 for 2. Let's just look at journal articles. Now we can narrow this down to 96 by just looking at journal articles. Well, these are bibliographies. Okay, here it is. This is the abstract. It's always at the top of the article. It's always generally in smaller font, sort of blocked off, and it gives us what we need to know about. Well, actually, that's not even an abstract. Let's try this again. This is good exercise because it doesn't. You can see it doesn't always work so smoothly. Journal article. This is not what I was looking for. Journal articles. No, that's the directory. Well, you see sometimes it doesn't work perfectly. This one doesn't have an abstract. So, whenever, oh, there it is. Well, this is not in English, so they were really all for 4. You got to just go through them. All these bibliographies. Anyway, let's pick another topic. Let's just do poverty in 2025. Because it really show you an abstract. You've probably seen one before. Never happened. Oh, it's a research report. Well, eventually you'll see. Let's just try bottom. But the sort of the takeaway here, it doesn't always work out perfectly. So there's something I can show you. What's that? What did you say?
It was on there.
It was on there? Okay. Usually it's right at the top.
Below the title.
Oh, this little thing? Oh, abstract, thank you. It usually isn't that hard to find. Thank you. Okay, well, the abstract is usually more obvious. The abstract gives you a very good idea of what's going to be in the article. So if you ended up with 93 of them, or 50 of them, you'd only really have to read a paragraph from each one to really decide whether it was appropriate for your research. Okay? All right. And you would use these Boolean operations to get to a reasonable number of articles. Okay. What we just looked at was a social science database. It's a shared resource. There's 100 and something, yeah, it's about 100 today. All of us could be on there at the same time. There are no physical limitations to a database. It's scanned and it's digitized. And that usually is very effective in not limiting what people can get. But sometimes we have to go to the library and get something from the catalogs. And the catalogs have physical artifacts. Right? Sometimes you may need a book. Sometimes you may need a magazine. Sometimes you may need a DVD or a transcript that is not digitized, has not yet been digitized, or for whatever reason won't be digitized. And this requires generally going to the library and hoping that the artifact is there, or else you have to put in a request for, to be the next one to get it. Excuse me. Okay. Just out of curiosity, I know we're only a couple weeks into the semester. How many of you have physically been in the library this semester? Really? Well, that's interesting. Why? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Printing, okay. All right. Yeah.
I've got relabs.
Relabs in the library? What's that?
I have relabs in general, so I can go there for like references and books.
Oh, okay. So you have to get the from a catalog, from a physical copy of something? Who else? Why didn't you want it? Okay. Good. That's a great reason. Yeah. That's very interesting. I would have not guessed it was that high. Just because that was the only place you could go when I was a studio. Many other choices. You had to live in the library for a lot period of time. That's very encouraging. I'm glad to hear that. Or see that. All right. Where's my clicker? All right. So, when you're doing your literature review, what you're trying to accomplish is to understand what other people have done in previous studies, and then talking about it in your paper. How did I lose a paper? Oh. Right? It benefits you to find out what other people have done, not only to have content for your research, but also to understand how they've approached the research. For a long time there was a belief that you could not ask people very sensitive questions on a survey. Right? They wouldn't feel comfortable answering questions about their religion and about their personal habits and things like that. And if you found that someone else was able to do that, they would give you the ideas that really save you a lot of time, that you wouldn't have to do individual interviews and convince people that you were going to keep their information confidential. And reviewing the evidence clarifies the topic, gives the researcher better ideas about how to carry their own research. Any questions? This is a step that, none of these steps can be skipped, and they have to be done in this order. So you have to do a thorough literature review and discuss it in the beginning of your paper, either in the form of a literature review or an annotated bibliography, usually both. When I teach research methods, we start giving a whole semester to do a proposed research project. And you do an actual literature review, do all the steps other than the actual research. Yes? Is there a bias to surveys? Yes. Like self-selection? Absolutely. That's one of the biggest problems. Like, for example, on the course evaluation, right? It's usually the students who really like the class and the students who really didn't like the class. You don't usually get the people in the middle because they just figure, I'm just okay with it, or everybody else should feel the way I do, so why am I taking it? A lot of times on those customer service things at restaurants, either it's not the most scientific things, but the people that had a great experience, or the people that had like water spilled on their food or something, that had a really bad experience. It's usually what's called self-selection of bimodal population. Yes, called self-selection. Yeah, I mean that naturally, but then you have to try to do things to mitigate that. But we'll talk about that. Yeah, but yes, that is one of the biggest problems. Okay. So you've defined the problem, you've done a thorough literature review, and now it's time to formulate a hypothesis. This is, in many ways, the most critical step in the entire research process or scientific method, because everything sort of hinges on your hypothesis. And it's very important that it's done correctly, that it is testable. It has to be testable. If you take statistics, if you're in the major or you take statistics, a big part of the statistics course is about hypothesis testing, right? You think about this in the introduction to sociology stage, but the more you understand this, and then you take statistics, you can tie the two together, because we can talk about confirming and refuting hypotheses here, but when you take statistics, we do a lot with hypothesis testing to see whether there is validation statistically. It makes the problem more precise. This is really the last time that you're going to get down to the specific. Once you get down to the specific, that's what you're going to live with. So now we've gone from poverty in New York, to poverty in Albany County, in Troy, it's Rensselaer County. Now we're getting down to, I'm just making this up, poverty in those counties amongst people that were living in apartment buildings versus private homes. Just something really specific. In formulating hypotheses that are testable means that you are, now the textbook describes a hypothesis as what? What's the way that they talk about it? Yes? Oh, educated guess, right? And that's okay. I think it's better to think about it as a proposed estimate, because then you remember that it's in the form of a statement. A hypothesis is not a question, it's a statement that can be proven or disproved, confirmed or refuted, right? So you would not be wrong if you said it was an educated guess, but I think what you get by coming to class is it's not just that, it's more of a proposed explanation. Any questions? There are 3 criteria for a valid, useful hypothesis. 1, a hypothesis it must be possible to prove a hypothesis is true. 2, it must be possible to prove the hypothesis is false. Anybody know what the third criteria is? Yes. It must be possible to reproduce the results. Right. So if somebody wins the lottery, right? Because every day or almost every day somebody wins the lottery. And if they said, well, you know, I love my lucky coin, and that's how I win the lottery. Okay, that's your hypothesis. Win again. Reproduce the results, right? Then that would be a valid hypothesis. But with very few exceptions, no one ever wins the lottery a second time, right? You probably counted on 2 hands how many people have ever won a big lottery more than once. They can have all the hypotheses they want. Oh, I prayed, whatever they say they do, let's see you do it again. Right? That would probably be the reason why this would not be a good hypothesis. Everybody clear about these criteria? Yep? Okay. So this is where you make your commitment to the research. You've narrowed it down, you've read what other people have done, you made some modifications. Now you are going to test this hypothesis through your research. And if you're right, great. And if you're wrong, that's okay too in research. If your hypothesis is refuted, that's still a research finding. It's not like losing a basketball game, right? Where you don't want to talk about it and it's a legitimate research finding. So now we're going to, before we actually execute the research, we're going to select a research design. You asked the question before about surveys. We're going to talk about several research designs. In the real world, there are reasons why you would select one research design over the other. And we will talk about some of the benefits and costs of research design. But, again, what you get here that you don't get in the textbook is that I will tell you that the real criteria for which research design you're going to select is realistically your budget and your time. This is not in the textbook. This is me telling you from having done it. When I assign this in my research methods class, or research proposal, right? Students who have 12 weeks or 13 weeks to complete the research and no budget are not going to select something that's going to be expensive and time consuming. But if you have a budget and you have time, you're likely going to pick something that's more appropriate. We'll talk today and into next time about surveys, about experiments, about observations, and there is a specific type of observation that we're going to touch on called an ethnography. We'll also talk about existing sources, which is also known as secondary analysis, which is most likely what you as an undergraduate will have. If you're going to be involved in research, you're going to be involved with research that someone else has done, and you're just going to make use of their data. And we're going to conclude with a specific kind of secondary analysis or existing sources called content analysis. Any questions at this point? Okay? Any questions? All right. So let's start with surveys. Ideally, you'd want to use a survey for a large population. You can get a lot of surveys out to a lot of people very quickly. Ideally, you want to use a survey for attitudinal or behavioral analysis. Things like, how do you feel about this? How many times have you done that? Those kinds of questions. One of the real challenges when using a survey as your research design is that response rate is almost always going to be a problem. How many of you have received some kind of survey in your email or paper in the last, since school started? How many of you responded to that survey? Right, there you go. One you did? So like a one, half of one, you two? So maybe a 1% response rate in this class? Why did you respond to it? They offered you some incentive. About the same thing. All right. So that's a reality, right? Is that ethical though? No? How many of you think it's not ethical to offer somebody an incentive? How many of you don't care, you just want the money? Yeah. The answer is it depends. If I were to put some conditions on you responding to my survey, then that's not ethical. If I said, you have to give me a good rating and I'll give you an A, that would be completely unethical. But if the university said, we will give you $10 on your account, your meal account, for every class you take the course evaluation, and that's all they say, that's fine. They're just trying to drive up response rate. We're not putting any conditions on it. There's no strings attached. You see the difference? Because you almost have to do it. Because response rates, now look at all the people that didn't take surveys here, right? But you got $50, really? That's pretty good. 15, oh, that's still okay. Well, can I ask you what the survey was about? Who put it? Who put it? The university? Okay. Yeah, if you walk around the hallways, maybe not in the LCs, but in the other buildings, there's all kinds of things up there. Oh, we'll pay you $20, we'll pay you $15 for doing some kind of survey or some kind of experiment or something. So it's done all the time, and it will drive up response rate. But you have to make sure you don't violate ethics, right? You can't say, we'll give you $15, but it has to be, you have to answer in a certain way. Right. So that's the deal. The other way you can drive up response rates is through reminders. Because we all get stuff in our email, and we'd all like to get to it, kind of like your email, and this is a good opportunity for me to remind you. If you send me an email and you don't get back to me within 24 hours, feel free to send me a reminder. Because what happens is, a lot of you send emails like 11 o'clock at night, which is okay, because I don't think you expect me to get right back to you. So the next morning, I'll say, okay, I'm going to get back all the students who sent me emails last night, and then I got like 40 other emails that bury it at the bottom of my email box, right? So like, oh, I wanted to get back to them, I can't even find it anymore. So if you do send me an email and I don't get right back to you, feel free to send me a reminder or just come up with Steve. All right, but anyway, the point is reminders are important because sometimes we lose things. Oh, I do want to do that survey, but now I can't find it anymore. And you go, oh, good, I'm glad they reminded me, right? And that's a typical way that this is done. But the survey itself must be constructed to allow for accurate responses. Because response rates will be challenging. And then, of course, you'll take, you're concerned that people will lie on the surveys just to get the $15 or whatever. Right? They want to get done with it. Because there's nothing worse than when you don't see that bar at the top to tell you how far along you are. Right? Because you don't know whether there's 6 more questions or 600 more questions. But you've already committed to it and you want that $15, so now you just start clicking, C, B, D, A, like that. It's a known behavior. So, the other thing that you can influence is the way that the questions are constructed. Because if you make, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you have questions that can't be answered accurately, even the most well-intentioned person can't answer them honestly. So you want to avoid certain types of construction of questions. You want to avoid double barrel. Double barrel questions would be something like this: how satisfied are you with your pay and your work environment? Well, you might really like your work environment, you might like the people you work with, you might like the lunchroom or the cafeteria or the parking lot or all that stuff, but you don't like what you're being paid. But if they only allow you to answer one way, like very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, not satisfied, very not satisfied, you can't answer honestly because maybe it's not both the same level of satisfaction. Everybody clear about that? So just because we're running up against time, this is the better way you would do it. If you're constructing a survey, you'd ask this question, or in these two questions rather. You break it into two questions: how satisfied are you with your pay? Let them answer that one, and then you ask the follow-up question about their work environment. That's going to lead to much more accurate responses and make people feel like they can answer accurately. Because if you just ask them a double barrel question, now they almost have to lie just to get the question complete. Everybody clear about how this would be a problem, asking a double barrel question? And you might say, well, that's so obvious. But it happens all the time. I get surveys all the time, and they're not this blatant, but there are questions that are double barrel all the time. And that's usually because the person who constructs a survey is not an expert in survey construction. A lot of times, how many of you have had a job when they had an internal employee survey that you had to answer, right? The fact that they make it mandatory is the first problem, right? But they usually turn to somebody like in accounting. Oh yeah, you just do this quick survey for us, right? They have no idea what they're doing. So they're going to ask a bunch of double barrel questions because they don't know anything. You also have to avoid things like leading questions. If you take an internal employee engagement survey and they tell you that they are doing it in an honest way, they are almost always lying to you. Because they won't ask your name, but they'll ask you, how long have you been here, what department are you in, right? What's your email address? But they won't ask your name. You know, male, female, age. They can pretty much figure it out, right? All right, so a leading question is one that prompts a particular response. It's not double-barreled, but it is leading. Something like this. Now, on the surface, this doesn't look like the worst question in the world. It's grammatically correct for the most part. What's wrong with it? Yes? Okay. What's that? No, it's okay. Go ahead.
It's basically heard you say yes, boss.
To make you think about it, or make you think that that's what the correct answer would be. So now you're sitting there, you've had a pretty good relationship with your boss, and you're searching your mind for anything that could, oh, that's right, 3 years ago at the holiday party, he didn't say hello to me right away. Well, I better talk about that. Right? Even though he's given you 3 promotions and, treated you very well and is nice when you have a sick day. And, oh, but he didn't say hello to me. Well, that's what I'm going to write. Right? Just to find something. You're much better off asking a neutral question like this, because the respondent can still answer discuss the problems that they have with their boss if they want to, but they're not being encouraged to do that. There's a lot of subtlety and science to survey construction. And if you can construct, take this class, you want to look about it, take research methods, do a lot of it, and then you get a job, and they do say we need somebody to write a survey, and you have experience with it, that can be a very valuable thing for your career, at least at that point. Any questions? You have 4 minutes? Okay, let's do one more slide. Everybody caught up? Let's talk about experiments and the time, at least as much time as we have. Experiments are complicated. Experiments are expensive and time-consuming. Just because you have to invest a lot of time in constructing the experiment in a proper way. There must be a test group. You must find a group of people with whom you're going to expose the test stimulus, whatever you are testing. And you also must be able to construct a control group that has identical characteristics to the test group. That is not easy to do. In many semesters, I teach 2 sections of Intro to Sociology and some other courses. Not this semester, but in many other semesters. So if I have one class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and one on Tuesday and Thursday, I think I had that last semester, would it be okay for me to say, I'm going to test whether students do better by taking notes by hand or whether they take notes by computer? Now, I didn't mention this before, but every study I've ever read said that students who take notes by hand do 30 to 40% better than students who take notes by computer. That's part of my reasoning. But nonetheless, would it be okay if I said, well, I'm teaching both sections at the same university. I'll make my Tuesday, Thursday class the test group and the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class the control group? Would that be an equivalent test and control match? Why not? It's still me, it's still the same textbook, still the university. Why not? A lot of things are different. There's a lot of things that could explain why there's a difference other than the way notes are taken. So, last thing for today, well, last slide for today. We have a minute. In experiments, you must control for many other variables as possible that you control for. There's almost always something that you can't control for, that you figure out later. And there must be a way of evaluating the pre- and post-test behavior. What was the behavior? What were the grades before I used the experimental stimulus or the test stimulus? And what's the difference after I used it? Was there any change in behavior? Any questions? We'll still talk more about experiments on Friday, but this is enough to get you more comfortable with what you read. Please do make sure you read the rest of the chapter, and if you want to read it, we'll be getting to chapter 3 at the end of this discussion. This is posted in the new textbook. If anybody missed anything before this, I'm down. I'm moving up to another minute here.